Welcome back. Today we are editing film photos. Some photos that I have shot on my Olympus OM2. It's a 1970s film camera. It's been loaded with some Ilford 400, Ilford Delta 400. Ilford Delta 400.
Hooray!
I'm going to show you the photos that I've got back from the company that scanned them in. They scan them in and send them digitally back via Dropbox, and we're going to edit them together because it's a little bit of a different process from editing on the Canon R5. Shooting film kind of means you've got the basics of an image kind of embedded in the film stock. Different film stocks provide different kind of qualities. So let's jump in and have a look. Let's start with my favourite. So this is a photo from Ireland. I can sort of see it's quite grainy, which I kind of like. I like the fact that you get the imperfections on the film photography more, I find, than you do with shooting on the R5. It seems to me to be a decent photo as is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play with the shadows and the highlights a little bit. I'd like to bring the highlights down just a touch so that I can see some more definition in the clouds. I don't want to take too much down, because if I take too much down it becomes a bit grey, and I kind of like the whiteness of the sky, if you like, the kind of overexposure bit. That's irritating, this little dot. So I'm just maybe a bit. There we go, take that out. But you can see some more other imperfections, like there's clearly something on the lens here or on the sensor. But I'm going to leave that in. I'm not necessarily finding that distracting. With the highlights down a little bit, I feel like I brought some more definition back into the sky. I'm just going to bring up the shadows a touch. And maybe a bit more contrast. Cool. Before, after. This is just how I like this image. This doesn't mean it's the only way to edit this image. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there now watching this who are going,
"You're ruining the image."
That's fine. I like it like this. If you like it a different way, that's totally fine. That's part of the great thing about photography, is it's subjective. It's okay, it's art. It's not science. Let's have a look at the boots next. I like the composition of this. I like that it's kind of a center image. Personally feel like this is there, really, but I'm just going to use the curve tool a little bit, the tone curve, just a little bit, to add a touch more contrast, but to keep the whites in the background. And that's it, I'm going to stick with that. Basically just added contrast there and not a lot else. Let's have a look at the next one. This is that same hill but through the window of the house. Now here I like the kind of focal point, but this top window is a bit distracting, and it's this is just like a personal thing, but I really don't like images that have, are supposed to have, if it's an L kind of shape, 90 degrees, I really want to straighten that back out. So I'm just going to quickly crop this to straighten that back out. It's not perfect science, because I've got some distortion because of the lens I've shot this with, but that to me seems a little straighter already, and I'm just going to bring it down a touch so that I can remove that top window. I just find that a little bit less distracting. I might also bring it up a touch as well, actually, just feels a bit better. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I did to the first image. I'm just going to bring the highlights down a little bit, bring the shadows up a touch, add in a touch more contrast before and after, and that's it. So you can probably tell here that the images that I'm editing, they've already kind of got a feel baked into them. For me, I'm choosing film because it's different to shooting digital. I don't want the same experience. I want to go slower, and I want to find different film stocks have got different styles. I want to explore them, and I want to see what kind of image gets baked into the film using the different film stocks, and then explore from there. So I don't want to destroy the characteristics of the different films because I want to explore the different films, if that makes sense in my head. This is Lewisham Railway. Now I've really overexposed the sky. There's no detail in the sky, so I'm not even going to try and recover that. I don't think there's kind of any point. I actually quite like that it's white, but it wasn't an intentional thing that I did to overexpose this. But it does mean that I am going to bring the exposure down a little bit just to kind of try and bring some of the detail back in this signal thing, or whatever this is. It does add a little bit more grain into the image, but that's okay with me. I don't necessarily mind. I quite like the film grain on this stock, so I'm really kind of happy with this one almost as is. But because it's a little bit overexposed, as well as straightening that perpendicular line out, I'm also going to just bring the shadows down a little bit and make sure that the contrast sits good with me. Now, I think because I've straightened this wall out here, I've actually made the signal look a little wonky. So this is what I mean. It's not a direct science because I have some distortion from the lens, but I don't really want to do a lens correction and start kind of messing about with the distortion. I'm quite happy with how this looks. And the last one, saw this image happening, saw the couple moving forwards in front of Beverley Minster and thought this is going to make a nice black and white shot, an old building, an older couple. I'm not going to suggest their age, I mean, that would be rude. But an older couple, and again on this I've kind of erred on overexposure, so I'm going to just drop that a touch, bring down the shadows. I'm not really messing with the highlights because as far as the sky is concerned, there really aren't any. There's some highlights on the building, these kind of whiter sections. So, I mean, I could always bring those back up, but it was a grey day, it's wet, and you can see on the ground it's wet. And I'm quite happy to make it a darker image, so I brought the exposure down a little bit. I'm just going to straighten it up some more. And I might also just throw a little crop on this to kind of try and make that couple more centered. I really like this one because the kind of scene itself lends itself to black and white. It's an old building, it's an older couple, we've got old street lights. It just feels like it's a photo from the past, and that's part of the enjoyment that I get out of film. So there you have it. Editing film for me is a real kind of minimal effort thing. I'm not really looking to play with much other than the exposure, and I'm using the tone curves to play with that, or I'm using the highlights, the shadows, the contrast kind of sliders itself. But I'm not really playing with any of the colour casting, I'm not noise reducing, I'm not doing any kind of heavy lifting. I'm really just playing with the contrast. And I really like this approach. It feels pure, it feels like I'm shooting an image and letting the camera and the film do the heavy lifting, and then I'm just tweaking a little bit to make it the image that I'm looking for at the end. I have this balance going at the minute where I'm shooting film and letting it be pure, and then I'm shooting digital as well and still kind of getting the big edits in, and I enjoy that side too. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you are interested in film photography and you have any tips or anything like that, drop them in the comments below. That would be super helpful. This is a new thing to me. I'm definitely not an expert film photographer by any stretch of the imagination. I just thought it was interesting to share with you how I approach my film edits. If you've got some suggestions, I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, you can do a like and subscribe. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one.